for the stratosphere. Easy breathing in your atmosphere. Oh, how could I? How could I ever forget last year when we were on top? When we were on top of the world, when we were on top, when we were on top of the world, the seasons don't stop, the axis forgot to twirl. When we were on top of the world, send me flying like a rocketeer without trying. Now I'm way up here. Oh, how could I? How could I ever forget last year when we were on top? When we were on top of the world, when we were on top, when we were on top of the world, the seasons don't stop, the axis forgot to twirl. When we were on top of the world. I can't see my house from here, but I can breathe the air so clear. I can't see my house from here, but I can breathe the air so clear. And how could I ever forget last year when we were on top? When we were on top of the world, when we were on top, when we were on top of the world, the seasons don't stop, the axis forgot to twirl. When we were on top of the world, on top of the
Good morning, Sonder fam. Welcome to our Sunday morning weekly setup. I think this is my favorite weekly setup time. I know I saw a couple of you saying the same in the chat. So for those of you who may not know, my name is Bailey Grady, and I will be your facilitator today. So what that looks like is we're going to be going through some different activities to kind of just open up in our journal, and then we'll get into our weekly setup pages and kind of go through and just share some examples up on the screen, but also we'll be sharing examples in the chat with one another, having good conversation, asking questions, supporting one another. So speaking of the chat, make sure that you have the little blue box near where you type set to everyone. Sometimes it will default to host and panelist, and sometimes it likes to flip back and forth. So you kind of have to keep an eye on it. Zoom can be a little sneaky like that. But you'll want it set to everyone so that everyone can see what you have to share in the chat. Because this is one of the best parts about socials is not only do you get to spend some dedicated time with just you and your journal, but you also have the opportunity to spend time in community with the rest of the Sonder fam as well, and kind of be in real-time communication. So definitely make sure that that chat is set to everyone. as we go through, if there is something up on the screen that you want to be able to refer back to, Jennifer, who is also here with me today, helping out in the chat, she and I will share a link to the recording for this at the end, like where you can find the recording of this, where you can find the recording of all our socials. So if you ever need to go back and rewatch, it usually takes a few days for it to be uploaded, but it will be there for you. But if you need to be able to refer back right away or a little sooner, don't be afraid to snap a few photos of what you see up on the screen, so that you can refer back to it. We also would love if you feel comfortable at the end, if you'll snap some photos of your journal. And if you feel comfortable sharing in the app, we would love to see those. You're going to see as we go through, most of my examples are definitely not mine. They come from all of you. And all of us are really creative at making these little pages work so well for us. And that's what we love to see here at Silk and Sonder is you taking the journal and really making it your own. So if you feel comfortable sharing how you set yours up, we would love to see that as well. So before we get started, we'll go ahead and go through our community guidelines here. So number one, always be kind and courteous to yourself and to others. Number two, no promotions or spam, please. Number three, we are going to respect everyone's privacy here. So when you are snip snapping things up on the screen, make sure you are not snip snapping things in the chat, because what happens in Sonder Social chat kind of stays in Sonder Social chat. And then no hate speech or bullying, of course. And limit repetitive product and accessory questions. We don't mind a little bit of chatter. Like, obviously, this is a great resource for, what kind of stickers are you like or pins and, kind of getting opinions from the community. But we also want to make sure that you all have time for the task at hand. And then while Jennifer and myself love to help, there are some things that she and I just don't have access to assist with. So if there's anything she or I can't help you with, we'll direct you over to the headquarters team at hello@silkwithsonder.com. They are sort of a lean and mean, small and mighty team, and they work Monday through Friday, so give them a day or so to get back to you. But if they need to help you out, they certainly will. And then finally, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you're responsible for your own emotions, well being, and decisions. So essentially, what that says is take what you need from today and from this time. If you just need to focus on yourself and your journal, great. Love that. We love our journals. We love that you set aside this time for yourself, and you should just focus on that if that's what's calling to you. If you are more of I really love to hang out with the community and I'm just going to focus on chatting today and I'm going to, hang out in my little space for maybe another like 20 minutes after and do my setup afterwards, that's totally fine too. You can also do a combination of both. And as we go through today, with the weekly setup, we don't have as many like prompts and things as we do with some of the other socials, but we do have our mind map. And sometimes those prompts and things can sneak up on you and bring out what I like to call the crunchy feelings. So many of you have heard me say this before, but I still think it's just the best analogy. Um, Sometimes a little bit of crunch, like in a dish or whatever, can be a good thing, right? It elevates it and it kind of takes it to the next level. Other times, crunchy can kind of be what it feels like when you step on a Lego with your bare foot. So if it starts to go into the Lego territory, we don't want that. That's a little much for today. So if you start to get into some of those crunchy feelings that don't feel good, it doesn't feel like it's time for exploration, and you want to like take a step back, then please feel empowered to do that. We want you to dig in and spend time with yourself and, uncover different things, but we want you to do it in a time that is right for you. So if you need to take a break and come back to something, just hang out, stay in the chat, jam out to the music, whatever the case may be, feel free to do that, and we'll move on to the next thing before you know it. So we will complete our optimism mind map today. It's our final prompt for optimism mind map. And this is an exercise that will not be pre-printed in your journal. We'll just flip to a blank page or space for that. Then we're going to be doing our rosebud thorn exercise where we reflect on last week before we start getting into our weekly setup pages for the week ahead. So as all of you know by now, our theme this month has been optimism. And I love this theme. I typically am like a very optimistic person. I was not always an optimistic person, quite the opposite, especially when I was younger, which is interesting because I feel like it's usually the other way around. Usually people are a little more optimistic when they're younger, but I certainly wasn't. And it really is kind of like a muscle that you have to flex. In my experience, anyway, the more I kind of practiced looking for optimism and trying to be positive, the more often it seemed to show up. Now, having said that, the end of November ended up being kind of rough for me. My anxiety kind of spiraled in a way that it hasn't done in a really long time, which, it's good that it hasn't happened in a while, but rough that it was happening. So having this theme show up right after was a little bit like the universe saying, like, all right, come on. I know it's been rough and tough, but like we got to get back on and keep going and try to think about the good things, right? And try to see what we can find silver linings in to move forward. So it's been a really good challenge for me this month to have this theme kind of in the midst of these challenges. But if that is you, or if you're somebody that's you, but it hasn't been a welcome challenge, maybe it's been a little bit of a struggle, I just want to say, like, I see you, I hear you. Like, it can be tough to really try to be optimistic if you're not genuinely in that space. So be patient with yourself. Nothing in nature blooms all year. I know this time of year can be really tough for us as well. And so don't overdo it. Don't try to force yourself into optimism before you're really ready. Small steps, finding small things to be grateful for and express gratitude is really the first step in optimism. So go at your own pace. Part of being optimistic is just keeping one's head towards the sun and one's feet moving forward. And so just one step at a time, one day at a time. So, but for those of you that have had a joyous holiday season, I'm sure this theme has also been really fun and has allowed you to hopefully lean into all of the things that really matter at this time of year. So, with all of that said, we are going to move into our final mind map for optimism. So, go ahead and find a blank page or space in your journal. If you've already set up your mind map page, flip over to that. Optimism is a skill that can be cultivated over time, right? Exactly what we were just talking about. Just one little step at a time. It starts with being intentional and focusing in on gratitude. So, are you ready to brighten your perspective? This month, we're unlocking the power of optimism. And this week, let's start by considering visualizing your future. So, you're going to imagine your ideal future. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And what steps can you take today to bring you closer to this vision? Now, when we get these visualization exercises, it can be really hard to not set up like guardrails on ourselves and to, kind of limit our thinking to what we feel like is possible and what we feel like is achievable. But like, I'm here to tell you, there are no rules. There is nobody that is going to come in and look at what you write in your journal and say, that's unrealistic. That's never going to happen. Like, unless it's you, right? Unless you are the person doing that to yourself. None of us are going to come over and grade your journal response about whether or not it's actually possible. Visualization is daydreaming with purpose, as it says up there on the screen. And when you visualize, then you materialize. Sometimes what we visualize for ourselves comes to fruition in ways that we didn't originally imagine or what we didn't intend to. So it doesn't mean it's a promise, right? It's just thinking about what your ideal future might be. And it's what your ideal future might be right now in this moment for yourself. And so that might look very different right now in this season compared to what it will look like if you did this same exercise in another 4 months. Um, as I said, obviously the end of November was really rough for me. And I've been kind of like trying to use my toolkit and stuff to get back to like baseline normal with my anxiety over the last couple weeks. So being in that headspace, it makes it a little hard to like think with optimism into the future, but I was still able to do it. It just maybe looks a little more humble, I think, maybe than what these visualization exercises sometimes look like for me, right? Where I'm like, I think sometimes I might be like, oh, like an ideal future would be like, oh, I like win the lottery and I don't have to work and or I, get to go and do things in Disney World full time or like whatever it is, right? Things that seem really outside of the box, but like, why not? Like, there's no rules. So if you're in that headspace where you're ready to dream and kind of think outside the box, then I encourage you to do that and go there because it helps us when we think outside the box, right, like that, and we take off those guardrails. It's kind of like a practice in limiting self-doubt. And so if you're in a space where you can really dream big like that, I encourage you to take advantage of it. But if you're more like me and it's a little bit tougher for you, there is nothing wrong with visualizing your ideal future in a more realistic manner. So, what I said is in my ideal future, I have great work life balance. I have a home that I love that meets my family's needs. I'm fulfilled in my career and other personal growth. My anxiety is continuously well managed, and I take good care of myself physically. And then I said, this feels good and aligned, and I can start getting really clear on my most important goals and set intentions and steps for the new year to try to kind of make steps towards that now. So once you kind of think about that ideal future, remember to also think about what does that feel like when you're imagining that, and then what steps can you take today to bring you closer to that vision. And maybe it's just thinking about, the new year is around the corner, and if you are somebody that picks a word for the new year or sets an intention overall for the year, maybe thinking about how this overall vision aligns with those sort of goals and things. So, enough of me talking. I am going to put on some music for you all to think about. If you feel comfortable sharing what you are writing down, we would love to see it in the chat. But yeah, I'll give you a few minutes and then we'll move into our next section. All right. Thank you all for spending some time with our mind map this morning. If you're still working on it, if you need to like come back to it later, no worries. This is kind of a longer one, so I totally get that. So we are now going to move into our rosebud thorn exercise. So this appears in your journal each week, and this week it is on page 50. But you can really do a rosebud thorn exercise anytime that you need to kind of reflect back with some balance. But today we're going to do it thinking about the last 7 days and thinking of a rose, something that went well, maybe something you're grateful for, something positive that happened. Sometimes the rose is that the week is over and you made it. Sometimes it's that simple. It's the sun is out in the morning and it's not dreary if that's what's going on. And then a bud is something that can bloom, something that you're maybe looking forward to, that gives you hope or motivation. It also might be something that is an opportunity that maybe you feel a little bit nervous about. Like it's okay, like two things can exist at once. You can be excited about something and also nervous at the same time. And then a thorn, something that didn't go well, something challenging or stressful that you could use more support with. So I like to do these in reverse. So I always do my thorn first. So my thorn for last week is just anxiety. It's still much higher than it has been in the last few years. And I logically understand that it's because I experienced like a triggering event and I had a panic attack, and so I'm kind of like coming down from that experience and trying to get back into, what feels good and right and healthy. And sometimes it just takes time. My body needs time to kind of process out all the hormones and things that happen when you experience that level of stress. But in the meantime, it's tough and it's frustrating. I'm ready to just hit play and get back to normal and get back to not being so anxious. But unfortunately, that's not exactly how that works. So just trying to be patient with myself, and it can be a little tough. So my bud is that last week, my boss asked me if I would like to go to London next year for work. And I'm like really excited. I'm also a little nervous because I've never traveled internationally before. Not really. I've been on like a cruise, but this is this will be like I'm getting on a plane. I know, Christy, I thought about that. So we have another facilitator, Katie, who lives in Scotland, as most of you know. At least right now she is. And I was looking at that. I was like, how far away is Scotland? And can I squeeze that in? And can I go see Katie? And there's another coworker who is thinking about maybe like extending one way or the other and going to Scotland. So who knows? But also I don't want to overwhelm myself. We have a really good friend who is moving to London, or rather moving to England. Sorry, not London. I don't know exactly where he's going to land once he gets over there. But he's getting married. His love, his life is over there. So we plan to go and visit in the future. So I'm not sure. I don't want to overwhelm myself too much on my first trip with work and everything. I might have other opportunities to go. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But that happened last week and it was really exciting. So that is my bud. And then my rose is, most of you know that we've been having some concerns over my cat, Groot. He just has been having like some weird muscle spasms and things. And he also had like a really bad reaction to some vaccinations. And so it's just been really stressful for me because I care really deeply about my animals. And we got some really positive news from the vet. They have said he is a-okay. There's nothing to be concerned about. He may just have like a really mild movement disorder, nothing that we need to do any treatment for. So that is also really helping a lot with my anxiety, to just get that positive news. So that was my rose. So I will put on some music for you all to think about your rose, bud, and thorn, and then we will get into our weekly setup. All right. Thank you all for taking some time to think about last week with some balance. It's always one of my favorite parts of the social when we do this because we kind of get to get a peek into each other's lives and kind of see the things that we're celebrating or the things that we're struggling with. And so often there are so many of us that, are kind of going through the same things or we've been there before. And sometimes like the things we're celebrating also are the things we're struggling with. Like it can be kind of a dual sided coin, if you will. And so it's really nice to kind of get to share with one another and really dive deep into community and be here for one another. And also just to celebrate because, sometimes it can be hard to celebrate, even. I know that sounds weird, but especially with like small wins, sometimes we don't give ourselves that space to really celebrate and let loose with some of those things. So it's nice that we have this invitation each week to do it here. So, with all that said, we are now going to move into our main event, which is our weekly setup. And we are on pages 52 and 53 this morning. So, those are my pages up on the screen. You can see my shiny little red holiday nails that I have going on there. But we will be going through each one of these sections together. So, let's start with how we want to feel in the top right of page 52. Now, my word for the year for 2025, I have not figured out yet, but my word for the year for 2024 was embrace. And so, one of the ways that I decided to kind of weave that in and be intentional with that in my journal was to change the how I want to feel section to this week, I want to embrace. And I think that's worked really well for me. So, once I figure out what my word for 2025 is, I will probably do the same thing next year. So this week, I want to embrace being present and using the tools that work for me, especially as we have, holiday season is fully here and upon us now for most of us, or many of us, I guess I should say. I know Jennifer mentioned at the beginning, Christmas and Hanukkah are aligned this year. So for me, my family celebrates Christmas, and so Christmas and Christmas Eve are next year. Next year, oh my gosh, or next week. So there will be many good times and memories, but there will also be chaos and just last minute things. And oh, I didn't know this person was coming and all of those good things. So just want to be present in the moment as much as I can. And then when those stressful things start to pop up, just try to use tools and things that I know work for me. But there are lots of good examples up on the screen for inspiration on words that may align with how you want to feel. We've also got all of these really great examples from Sonder Club, and you can see from these examples, like it can be one word, it can be a quote that aligns to your word, it can be the word and the definition, it can be multiple words. Again, no rules. Like what you have in the journal is just a suggestion, right? It's just a guideline. So whatever you need to do to make this kind of aligned with you for the week that you have ahead, feel free to do that. So I'll put out a quick song for you all while you think about this, and then we'll move into our next section. All right. If you're still trying to figure out how you want to feel, don't worry about it. It'll come to you. Sometimes this ends up being the last thing I fill out on the journal. I have to get everything out before I can figure out how I want to feel about it. But we are now going to move down to the middle section with our weekly to dos and major three goals. So lots of folks have started kind of pairing these sections together, and I'm kind of pairing them together in my own way as well. So with the weekly to-do section, I write out like my commitments and things, any appointments that I have. Obviously, I have like Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with the family. I've got a nail appointment, and I've got a couple Sonder socials next week. But then I also set three to-dos that tie into my weekly affirmations. So I use the Silk and Sonder personalized coaching platform, and it is great and gives me three weekly affirmations each week because I get mine weekly, which is perfect for my weekly setup. So I used to pick like three major goals here, but I found that for me, I didn't really stick to them. It just wasn't really motivating for me personally. And so having the three affirmations each week has actually been a lot more helpful and kind of more aligned for me and how I'd like to tackle my week. So I write down the three affirmations that it gives me, and then I try to come up with three to dos to kind of support those affirmations. So, for example, the first one I have here is I embrace change with confidence, knowing I am resilient and resourceful. And what I want to do to support that is journal. I've been really busy this month and I have not had a chance to really spend time in my journal like I normally do and would like to. So, I still have a lot of pages that need to be done in here. So, I really want to make some time this week to make sure I am spending that time with my journal and getting those things filled out. And then another one is I create nurturing home environment that reflects my strength and calm. So my to do with that is to tidy because since it has been busy, there are a few things around the house that really need to be done here. So, so just an example there. But there's all kinds of ways that you can partner these two together if that is your plan, or you can leave them separate, whatever works for you. These are some examples where folks have decided to kind of partner the two together. They have kind of set their major three things or areas of focus first, and then they have come up with some to dos that will support those things. And in a couple cases, they have like three to dos that kind of support the one thing. So that is one way you could tackle it. Or you could keep these separate and just think about how you want to look at them separately if that is what makes more sense to you. If you have a super busy week ahead with like the holidays and things, especially, you may want to look at that Eisenhower decision matrix and really start to get clear about what is actually important, what has to be done this week, right? And maybe what isn't as important. Maybe you can delegate it. Maybe it's okay if it doesn't happen. I know that a lot of us can put a lot of pressure on ourselves this time of year to just make it all happen and all come together. And most of the time it does, right? Even if it's not 100% quote unquote perfect or what you planned in the beginning. So be gentle with yourself, especially if you're somebody that is doing a lot of the organizing for family and things, because that stress can add up very quickly and be very real. If you are somebody that you feel like you have plenty of time to do things this week, you just need to do them, and you're having trouble getting started, you can always try that Pomodoro technique. It's that little pink graphic in the top center there with the details of what you do for that. Sometimes it can help to just get started on something. You could also go a totally different direction and do a to be list. So maybe you have a less productive focused week this week because maybe you have some time off or whatever the case may be. So maybe you want to focus on being present and being intentional, like focus in on things like that. Or maybe you want to do a need, want, hope list. Maybe that feels a little bit more right to you than doing an actual to do list. You can also do a bingo. We love a bingo here at Silk and Sonder. So if you are, fortunate enough to have the week off next week or have some days off next week, not all of us are, I know. But if you are, maybe you want to lean into that and do a little holiday bingo or a little time off bingo, whatever that looks like. You could also try do's and don'ts. So things you want to do this week and things you don't want to do this week. Or you can change it up completely, put a morning routine here, stickers, doodles, quotes, again, whatever feels right for you in that space. It's also totally fine to leave it blank if it doesn't speak to you. And that goes for any and all areas of the journal. So if there's ever a space that just doesn't feel like it's serving you, like it's okay to put things in there and try things out because you never know what is going to start working for you. But it's also okay to just leave it alone for a week or two. And then looking over at our major three, you could look into different areas of focus, kind of like we saw at the beginning, or you could actually just pick three things that you want to do this week, right? Like, if I do these three things, this is going to make everything easier on me. these are the three things I want to focus on. You could turn this into a bingo. I really like this example where they wrote out their why underneath their goals, because we do have quite a bit of research that shows if you write out your why with your intention, you are a lot more likely to stick with it. And then there's all kinds of ways that you could repurpose this as well if you want to do something a little different. Like maybe it's a movies and TV shows list. Maybe you've got those like holiday movies that you want to watch every year and you haven't been able to do that yet. Maybe you want to do a little craft with yourself, like put together a little self-care jar, or something similar. I know some of you were talking about Advent earlier, so maybe there's something around that. Again, whatever you need or want this space to be for you, please feel empowered to make it work for you in your life. So I will put on some music and then we'll go back through all of these slides and then we'll head into the next section. Okay, hopefully you have identified what you want to do with these sections. We are now going to hop down to the habit and activity section. So, this is another part of my journal where I really lean into the personalized coaching platform because it gives me breath work each week as well. And with my anxiety, I know for a fact that taking time to just be and breathe and either do breath work or meditate is insanely helpful for me, and it needs to be a priority for me, especially right now. So I have changed this section into breath work rather than habits and activities. I tend to focus on the like big monthly wheel for my habits and things. So this section, sometimes I use it for habits and activities, sometimes I use it for routine building. It kind of gets like switched up. But I know for some of you, this works better than that big monthly wheel because it can be hard sometimes to commit to a few things for the entire month. So having this section to kind of work in with some flexibility is always a nice thing. So you can use this to do habits and activities or habities, as we like to call them sometimes. You could use this section to maybe focus on some fun activities too. Again, with the holiday week next week, it might look a little different than some of your other weeks, depending on what your work schedule looks like, or maybe you have family in town, like maybe your normal routine, whatever it is getting disrupted, either in a good way or maybe a stressful way. It just sort of depends. So maybe there are some different habits or activities you want to focus on this week because of that. So something to consider. And then you can also transform this space as well. If there's something specific you need to track this week, this can be a good place to track things. You can also use this as a place to kind of just check in with yourself each day. Maybe you want to write something like, are my shoulders tense? Am I breathing fully? Like stuff like that. Just a little moment to where you can, really like check in and see how you're feeling and make sure you're like releasing some of that stress and not holding those tension areas and everything. So feel free to use this however works for you. I will throw on a quick song and then we'll move into our next section. Okay, we are flipping on over to page 53, and we are starting on this page with the section titled Meal Plan. Now, this section gets repurposed a lot, not because having a meal plan is a bad thing, it can be a very helpful thing. Whether you're actually planning out your meals or you're tracking, there's a lot of reasons that that could be really beneficial and really important for you, depending on what you have going on. But this space takes up a lot of room in your journal each and every week. and the layout is kind of perfect for a lot of different things. And so, because of that, people do repurpose this section quite a bit, myself included. I use this to put my work meetings. It kind of just helps me to have like my personal like commitments and to dos in the to do section, and then my work things on the meeting section. So that way I'm not double booking myself and I kind of have an idea of what's going on with my week. I do a lot better at work when I take the time to do my weekly setup ahead of time before I start going into the week. So I kind of know what's happening. But I don't typically work on Saturdays and Sundays. So I use that space to write out one of the personalized coaching platform journal prompts that I get. I don't actually like respond to the prompt there in that space. Um, I do that in another area of my journal, or sometimes depending on the moment of the day, and how many pages I've used up, I have to like pull out my thoughts journal and respond to it in there. But if I don't write things down in a place where I can see them like on a regular basis, I tend to lose sight of them. And you'll see more of that in some of these other sections in a second. So having that journal prompt there front and center in my journal each week that I can kind of look at helps me to make sure that I actually do the journal prompt because they are really good ones and I want to make sure I'm taking advantage of that. So I always write at least one there so that I don't forget to spend some time doing that. But again, this section gets repurposed a lot just because it's a really good layout for a lot of things. So there's all kinds of examples and things there up on the screen, including that list of repurposed things like symptoms and health trackers, work, homework, lesson plan reminders, daily scripture, journal prompts and responses, like all the things, right? Lots of folks use this for their affirmations. Some people use this as like a check-in space. I know some people will use this as their like to-do section actually, because this works out a little bit better for them to have it like day by day, and then they use the to-do section for something else. There's really no right or wrong way to do this, just whatever is going to work for you in your week ahead. So I'll hop between these examples here, and then we'll move into our other section. All right. We are now hopping over to our mind body health plan and the shopping list section. So I've started to see some people combine these two sections together as well. I'm not currently combining mine, but I kind of have combined them in my setup because I'm seeing them used together and or interchangeably. So my mind body health plan, I just did a little self-care bingo. So I've got like watch holiday movie, have a holiday treat, kitty snuggles, wash blankets, because I love it when my blankets are freshly washed. I like love to cozy up under blankets, and when they're fresh out of the dryer, it's like the best thing. And then my shopping list I use as an actual shopping list because, again, if I don't have something written down, I tend to lose sight of it. So I need to have it written down so that one, I don't forget to buy the thing, or two, I don't impulse buy the thing because I'm afraid that I'll forget if I don't buy it right away. And then underneath my shopping list, I have kind of just a running to-do list. These are kind of similar to the shopping list, like things I don't necessarily have any intention of doing this week, right? Like that's a lot of stuff. There's no way I could do all that this week. But if I don't keep a running list of those like bigger to-dos, when I actually have space to do them, I won't remember. So I have to kind of just keep that running list of to-dos of the larger projects and things each week just to make sure I don't forget about anything. So that's how I use my sections, but you can see lots of different examples here. If you are going to actually carve out a mind body health plan, please make sure that you are planning for rest. Rest is an action, and there are actually 7 types of rest. If you're not familiar, there's a graphic there in the top right that talks a little bit more about that. The goal is to not like check off every type of rest as like a bingo. It's more about checking in with yourself and thinking about where you might have been spending a lot of energy and maybe where you could use your cup to have a little bit of refill there. You could also do a check-in here. This could be a great place to do like a daily rose if you are into the rosebud thorn exercise. You could also kind of try to pair this over to like your major 3 goals and thinking about, is there a way to support that with some balance or make sure that you're thinking about those things from a self-care perspective. Again, we love a bingo here at Silk and Sonder, so feel free to turn these things into a bingo, or use the stickers for bingos if you have those. I also like the I feel I need tea chart, and then just the weekly reminders of like drink your water, all these kinds of things, right? And then lots of people use it as like a wardrobe tracker or wardrobe planner, like planning out their outfits for the week. Obviously, that can really help to make things go more smoothly. I like the little self-care bingos, and I love the washi tape scraps. I think that's such a fun and creative thing to do with that space. But you can see in the center all these different suggestions of how to make this space work for you as well. So I'll put on one more quick song for us, and then we will wrap up our time together. It always goes by so fast. Thank you, everybody, so much for spending time with us today. The last little section we have is just the I'm loving section. And as we close out our time together here, if you want to pop into the chat what you are currently loving, we would love to see it and share. I'm currently loving new work responsibilities. It has made things a little stressful, but kind of in a, I don't want to say a good way because stress is not necessarily a good thing. But it's stressful because it's new, but it's also going really well. And it's kind of an area of the business that I really thrive in. So I am enjoying it, even if it is a little hectic at the moment. But you can see all on the screen, there's all kinds of different things that you can say that you are loving. Yes, Stephanie said, loving the endless possibilities that they see ahead. Love that. So as we close out, if you feel like sharing, please do so. We would also love it if you feel up to sharing your planner with us. So if you snap a few photos and throw those up in the Sonder Club app, we would love to see them and potentially feature them in a future social. I will tell you, like, the biggest thing for me as far as sharing in a social, if that's your goal, is just to have a really clear picture. That's it. Just being able to get like a clear photo goes a long way. You heard me talk about the personalized coaching platform a couple of times today because I absolutely use it every single week in my setup to make sure that I'm kind of aligned with my values and the things I need throughout the week. So if you're interested in that, Jennifer O will be popping in some links and things in our chat. But there's all kinds of stuff in there, not just the things that I mentioned today, but there's an entire resource library in there, and they're adding more and more to it all the time. It's kind of blown my mind, to be honest with you. Like, I have been able to chat with the personalized coach a time or two where I was really struggling with my anxiety, and I was really impressed with the conversation that we had. So I will also share my playlist here for all of you, for anybody that wants it. Feel free to enjoy. Um, take songs from it, listen to it, whatever it is that you would like. But with all of that said, it has been our pleasure to spend this time with you here today. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday and a magical holiday week ahead. And until next time, be good to each other, and we'll see you all in Sonder Club.
Sun's up, it's a little after 12. Make breakfast for myself, leave the work for someone else.